province of Ontario has been like a goodie bag of candy for us. Every time we stick our hand in, we pull out a completely different taste that is wonderful and equally sweet. We head down the road to Niagara-on-the-Lake, a quaint little historic town with a very important story being told by the fine historians at Fort George, a significant location in the War of 1812.
No, it is still tight. Is there any kids there? Nobody open a door.
There are so many biking trails in this area. You can check out vineyards and restaurants. So we headed out to go to the town and check out Fort George.
The conflict started between the revolution in here, where the Americans wanted to be separate. So all of that side of the river went back to them. And because of that, the British needed to secure a part of the river. So they came over here and built Fort George as quickly as possible. So this fort was constructed, started being built in 1796. So Jay's Treaty happened in 1795, and a year later, the British came here and started building this fort. Construction was from 1796 to 1799. So they came here and built this pretty quickly. The British started pushing back. The Americans held this fort for about 7 months-ish. And then afterwards, after that's it, a lot of their contracts started expiring, so Americans started going back to the other side of the river, as well as, I mean, fair enough. If I wasn't getting paid to do this today, I probably wouldn't be here either. That being said, there was also something called dysentery that was a big issue as well. So that's when you start mixing your drinking water up with the not so good stuff that comes out the other end. What we call a 9-pound cannon. It's called a 9-pound cannon because it shoots a 9-pound cannonball at the end of it, and alone generates enough force to hit anything that you see. There's that back corner over there with the drapes. That's the marriage quarters, because you're gone for either 7 or 21 years. Those are your 2 terms of service.
So did the women see it as a good thing to come or a bad thing?
The women are coming here, you get to see your wife, you get to hang out with your family, you get to have them still, as well as the women would actually be making more than the men at some points here. So imagine being paid for every piece of laundry you've ever done in your entire life. So you're only getting half rations rather than soldiers who are getting full rations. Children are getting quarter rations. But at the age of around 10 to 14, young boys could join.
So I guess back in 1812 size does matter because you had a height requirement in order to shoot the gun.
Who would have thought?
I know, right?
You can understand why they had a height requirement given the size of the weapon. Projectile, of course, we don't fire live ammunition today. We find that cuts down a repeat visitation. But 200 years ago, this is the machine gun of the day. This is capable of firing between 3 and 6 times a minute. Blank cartridge. Prime and load. So you move the musket to the right-hand side of the body, throw open the frizzen to expose the pan. The next order is handle cartridge. Reach back, grab onto a cartridge, bite off the top. Prime, pour some of the gunpowder in the pan. Close the frizzen to hold the gunpowder tight. Cast about. Now, the rest of the powder, the paper, and the ball, if there was one, now goes down the barrel. The rammer is used to seat that cartridge at the bottom. And I can't stress how important it is to put the ramrod back. I mean, don't get me wrong, some people think that's an excellent projectile. I don't disagree. I just think it's an awkward projectile. And the awkward part is going across the field and asking for it back. So, I tell you the manual, tap it. Make sure you have put it back. Left in the barrel, very good chance you'll create a shish kebab on the other side. Okay, ready? Set. Fire. the smoke. It's fully conceivable that I could get dressed up in the best camouflage known to modern man today. I can paint my face. I can stick leaves and trees and rocks and things like that in my hat. I could hide in this field and look like a bush for days. But let me ask you, how many times have you been able to fire this weapon before somebody said, that bush just fired at me? You can't hide. It's impossible. A single shot, the cloud of smoke says. So the bright red suit was done for a few reasons, and one of them is self-preservation. I'll explain. Most people are surprised by the amount of smoke produced by one weapon. One weapon does not a whole battle make. Given the way the wind is moving right now, if we put 100 men in the field, well, anywhere, and they fired, the smoke would surround us. And we'd have no way of seeing each other. That's 100 men. On Tuesday, the 27th of May, 1813, 6,000 American soldiers came to take this fort. Imagine 500 giving fire. You create what became popularly called the fog of war. Where it gets so smoky you cannot tell the difference between the good guys and the bad guys. And frankly, that's kind of important. Friendly fire is not a new concept. You don't want to be shooting at your own guys, so the British are famous for standing there in the bright red suits with, as we call them, the shoot me here crossbows. While the Americans are standing on the other side of the battlefield, all dressed up in bright blue suits with the shoot me here crossbelts and tall black hats.
So if you're under, what was it, 5'6"?
5'6" was the, in 1811, it dropped from 5'7" down to 5'6".
So if you're shorter than that, you're not going to be able to blow yourself away.
That's true.
Right?
But you'd also have a hard time loading it.
Yeah, oh yes, right.
Right, because you got to take the rammer out.
You'd have to point it at other people.
Turn it around and put it back in. And you can do this stuff kneeling and lying down, but the longest or the quickest way to load is standing.
Right.
Right? So if you're kneeling down, it adds a step because now you got to take it, you're on different angles.
Okay, that makes sense now.
Yeah. That's why I'm here.
So size does matter.
In this case, it does. So we get girls in our squad that are, just about the height of the weapon.
Yeah.
Right? Now, 200 years ago, of course, women weren't necessarily allowed in.
Right.
But today, we can't restrict them.
Right.
But what we can say is, listen, we want you to be at least the height.
Yeah, yeah.
We had one girl that was a little shorter, but she got around it.
Right.
She could still load in under 15 seconds, which was the appropriate time to be able to load in.
Right.
Now, her trick was that she basically put the weapon
You'd have
back
to put it at
here.
an angle, yeah.
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 Which, as long as the person behind you knows what you're doing.
Right.
Otherwise, why'd you keep hitting me in the ankle with the butt of your weapon?
And the guy in front, why are you pointing
Exactly,
at me?
yeah. Well, she was front rank. Right.
Okay.
We don't put anybody, unless we had really short people. Yeah, no, she was front rank.
So we'd be the first to go then?
Sadly, yeah. Yeah. Yep. The shortest people are the drummers, though, because oftentimes
and
they're
they'd be in
between
the back.
9 and they're marching in behind.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, no, if you're short, sadly, that's where you are, out in front. So what you're going to find down there is the raw storage of gunpowder. What you don't find down there is cartridges. We've got the inner chamber where the gunpowder is stored. You take what you need out of that, you close that door, and you work in the lab. And you get yourself grounded today. We can't wear wool 200 years later. We couldn't wear it back then either. Static electric charge will cause a nasty explosion.
So when those guys over on the American side are sending their cannons over to light this place on fire, why didn't they just...
Well, because they were within range. If that building blows up,
Right.
they're only about 1,600 yards away.
So that would damage them.
Exactly.
Ah.
Right?
Like today, that's what you do, right? You go after...
Their ammunition. But we can
ammunition.
do it from farther away now.
Yeah.
Right, so it doesn't hurt us.
Right.
Gotcha. So much to learn, okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, there is.
Right? And I mean, these are well thought out details. So there would be educated people, though. Educated British people would be allowed to have leadership positions, and they could be officers, although they had to buy their way into being that officer. But then they could make more money, but then they had to buy their food, and they had to buy their uniforms so that they could continue to be at the back of the pack calling the shots. So that's interesting. The other interesting point is the lower class, because remember we're talking British here, the lower class people who were never educated, but basically were laborers, had to continue being lower class people. They would be illiterate, they would have no education, and they would come into the army for a roof and food. And then they would just do whatever they were told. They were not to question, and they would never rise up out of that level. They would never become an officer. You didn't learn and work your way up. You might work your way up in that rank, but you would never leave that rank because you had to buy your way to being an officer, and you were never paid enough to be able to buy your way into that. And any money you did have, they spent in town drinking anyway, so enough of that.
Money and education, right?
Oh yeah,
Like even if you had money, you still needed to be educated.
you still needed to be educated, so where would you get that education? So I mean, the elite stay elite, and the commoners, I guess they would call them, would never amount to anything, yet they were the ones at the front of the lines. The short commoners at the front of the line.
Yeah. Or you could be a drummer. I think I'd be a drummer.
Yeah, a drummer could go at the back and just relay the commands from the officers to the group en masse.
So everybody could march to the beat of my drum.
There's a good idea.
So this is the building the Americans didn't want a hot shot because it would have blown them apart across the river. So this was really probably the only surviving building.
Yes, I believe it is. And it would have been built in the 1700s.
What was the minimum height of the army?
I don't remember. But look at how tall the doorway is.
Huh.
So maybe short people were allowed to make
Ammo.
ammo.
I could be a drummer or an ammo guy.
Yeah,
Or at the front of the line. I think I was too short to be at the front of the line,
I think so.
which is good. I'd be a drummer. So really, the vertically challenged could have the best positions in the army. You're either in here, which no one wants to bomb, not even the enemy,
Right,
or you're at the back of the line.
right. Just call them the shots.
Just calling the
really.
shots. Huh. Not so bad, not so bad.
And you get fed,
Yeah,
and you get a place to sleep, and you get paid.
and you don't even have to buy your way in or be educated. Huh. Wow, what is this?
I don't know. This is one of those rounded lookout tower things.
Oh,
I'm going up. Oh, maybe not. I have no idea. I didn't ever have any military expertise. So this is where you would be able to peek out. You can see across the river onto the American side. Pretty cool, huh?
yeah, it is cool.
Come on.
I see the light.
Does it come out
Oh,
like
really?
a regular
Snacks? No one said there was snacks.
It's a what you're looking at there is an example of the officer's dinner menu. So that's what they would have been eating. They would have set the menu for a month and had this basically every single night.
Really?
Yeah, so quite a lot of food. It is being prepared for about 20 men. So we refer to this as the day kitchen, the officer's day kitchen, because it's making breakfast and afternoon tea. So soldiers are cooking for themselves. They would have had little cook shacks kind of near the barracks. We don't know exactly where they were because they burnt down quite often. Shockingly, soldiers aren't great cooks.
Here, the
Right.
people caring for the injured and ill would have been met.
You're
Right.
exactly right. You would have had a regimental surgeon here and 2 surgeons' mates. We actually had a regimental hospital here. So I know soldiers' wives probably would have acted as nurses in the aftermath. As well, soldiers are typically bringing other soldiers off the battlefield and kind of bringing them to the back. And the worse the battle's going for the army, the more likely they are to volunteer to take people back to the field hospitals as well. But so you would have soldiers helping hold down men during amputation and things like that because anesthesia isn't invented until 1845.
Right.
So really the only thing they have for pain relief is alcohol, which they're not going to give them because alcohol thins your blood and they would bleed out. Or they might give them opium if they have it, but chances are they probably won't. This is pretty remote, this area here. And if they did have it, they're probably saving it for officers. One thing I find really interesting about military medicine is that in the aftermath of battles, it doesn't matter what coat you have on. If you're injured, they will help you. So the people at the highest risk on the battlefield are actually ensigns, which are the lowest rank of officer because they're actually carrying the flags, the king's colors. And those are the symbol, of the regiment, of the king. It's a disgrace to lose those. So ensigns would be targeted because of that. And there is actually a story from, I believe it's the 49th Regiment, of an ensign who gets injured at the battle, and he actually takes the flag, folds it up, and tucks it under his jacket because the last thing he wanted was for it to fall into the hands of the American. He would rather die than have the Americans get the flag. And he's actually commended for that quite a lot, actually, because it was considered an act of valor.
But economies, too, from then till now, are built on conflict, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And
Conflict and then trade as well.
this is it,
Right?
and those two things were very much together when you're thinking about shipping everything.
Well, that's one of the causes of the War of 1812 too, is the blockade of American vessels. This really is America standing up to Britain and saying that they will not be bullied, because up until this point, realistically, Britain was bullying them a little bit. You know, they didn't respect them as a young nation. They didn't respect their citizenship. I mean, we cite the burning of the White House as such an important event in this war, but you know, they burned two of our capitals first, right? Or the burning of Newark, which is now Niagara-on-the-Lake. You know, I don't like demonizing the Americans when I talk about that event, because the British burnt civilian towns from Youngstown all the way to Buffalo, right? So there's really not one side of this war that's better than the other. It's just a pretty vicious war on both sides.
Right.
And then at the end of the day, everything goes back to the way it was.
Right.
You know,
like the end line and how it affects today.
Maybe unchanged, but if they hadn't fought back, it would be
exactly.
changed.
And I don't want to say that this war was for nothing, because it wasn't. Like I mentioned before, it's the Americans standing up and saying they will not be bullied, but this also establishes an identity for Canada as a young nation. And I mean, Canada wouldn't be a country for another almost 50 years, but this is kind of really considered the first Canadian war as well. So it does kind of give Canada this place as a young nation.
I guess where I stand in this world today, if that line hadn't
Stayed the same.
then, it would have changed my life today.
Yeah, things would be a little bit different. We'd probably be American right now, as I said, with stars. Are you a historian, or?
No, I just am interested and like to read and learn.
Yeah, that's always good. Learning is a
Combination between the flute and the piccolo.
This is the people that work here.
They're into it.
They know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
This is great. And they can take history and share it with you in a way that allows you to get it and be part of it. Totally cool place. Don't miss it for your $11.70.
Any last minute thoughts?
I love Niagara Falls. I love Niagara-on-the-Lake. I love the history. The food was pretty good.
Yeah.
There's just so much here. So if you haven't already, click the subscribe button because we've got so much more to show you in this chapter. Hit the like button and we'll see you out there.